You've been told your whole life that reality is fixed, something solid, objective happening to you from the outside. But what if that's the biggest lie you've ever believed? What if everything you see, touch, and experience is just the surface of something infinitely deeper, a multi-layered architecture of meaning that your psyche has been filtering, editing, and reshaping without your conscious awareness? Most people walk through life as passengers, reacting to shadows on the wall, never realizing they're the ones holding the light. They wonder why the same patterns keep repeating, the same relationships, the same emotional loops, the same feeling of being trapped in a story they didn't write. And the truth is almost too simple to accept. You're not trapped in reality. You're trapped in the layers you haven't learned to see. Here's the paradox no one wants to hear. The more you try to change your external world without understanding the internal architecture shaping it, the more exhausted you become. You can move cities, switch careers, end relationships, start new ones, but if the lens through which you're perceiving reality hasn't shifted, you'll just recreate the same experience in a different setting. It's like rearranging furniture in a haunted house and wondering why the ghosts are still there. The ghosts aren't in the furniture. They're in the foundation, in the unseen layers where your perceptual conditioning, your emotional gravity, your shadow, and your unconscious myths are quietly running the show. And until you go deeper, until you learn to see the architecture itself, freedom will always feel just out of reach. But here's the good news, the part that changes everything. Those layers aren't fixed. They're not permanent walls you're stuck behind. They're permeable, responsive, waiting for you to recognize them so they can begin to transform. Every layer of reality, from the way your nervous system filters perception to the quantum field responding to your coherence, is part of a living, breathing conversation between your soul and existence itself. And the moment you stop trying to escape the layers and start learning their language, something miraculous happens. Reality stops resisting you. It starts reflecting you. Not the fragmented, conditioned version of you, but the deeper you. The one that's been waiting beneath all the noise, all the programming, all the stories you inherited and mistook for truth. So if you've ever felt like you're living in a reality that doesn't match who you really are, if you've ever sensed that there's something more beneath the surface but couldn't name it, this is your invitation. Not to transcend reality, but to finally see it. All 9 layers. And in seeing them, to remember that you were never separate from the architecture. You are the architecture, and it's time to build something new. There's something most people never stop to consider, that reality isn't happening to them, but through them. It's as if we're walking around with invisible glasses, lenses shaped by memory, trauma, culture, and soul, and we mistake the filtered view for truth itself. The architecture beneath perception is like the foundation of a house you've lived in your whole life but never examined. You know every room, every corner, but you've never looked under the floorboards to see what's actually holding everything up. And that's where the real story lives, in the unseen frameworks, the silent structures that shape how your psyche interprets light, sound, touch, pain, and meaning. Most people spend their entire lives reacting to shadows on the wall without ever turning around to see the fire casting them. This isn't abstract philosophy or some distant mystical idea. It's the difference between living as a passenger in your own existence and recognizing yourself as the architect. When awareness forgets its own architecture, life begins to feel random, like things just happen, like you're a leaf in the wind, tossed around by forces you can't control. But the moment you realize that every experience is being filtered, interpreted, and created through the lens of your own consciousness, something shifts. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this trying to show me?" That single question changes everything. It turns suffering into a teacher, repetition into a pattern worth decoding, and coincidence into the soul's native language. Reality stops being a threat and becomes a mirror, one that reflects not your face but the architecture of your inner world. And here's the thing most people miss. The mirror isn't static. It's alive, breathing, responding. Every thought you hold with emotional weight, every belief you inherited without questioning, every wound you buried instead of felt, they all become part of the architecture. They shape what you see, what you attract, what you avoid, and what you call truth. You think you're looking at the world, but you're actually looking at yourself projected outward. The forest you walk through, the people you meet, the opportunities that appear or disappear, they're all reflections of the invisible structures within. And if you want to change what you see out there, you don't rearrange the furniture in the room. You go deeper. You examine the blueprint. You ask yourself, what am I building with my attention? What myth am I living inside without knowing it? Because once you see the architecture, you can rewrite it. And when you rewrite it, reality itself begins to shift. Not because the world changed, but because you did. And that shift, quiet as it is, echoes through every layer of existence that follows. Your nervous system wasn't designed to show you reality. It was designed to keep you alive. And there's a huge difference between those two things. Every second, your brain is filtering out about 99% of the information coming at you, deciding what's important, what's dangerous, and what can be ignored. It's like having a bouncer at the door of your consciousness, and that bouncer has been trained by every moment of fear, every childhood wound, every time you were told, "Don't look there," or "That's not safe." So what you end up seeing isn't the world as it is. It's the world as your trauma, your conditioning, and your survival instincts have decided it should be. You're not perceiving reality. You're perceiving a memory of reality, edited and filtered through a system that prioritizes safety over truth. And that's why two people can stand in the exact same room and see two completely different worlds. They're not looking at different things. They're looking through different filters. Here's where it gets interesting. Most of those filters were installed before you even had the language to question them. Think about a child who grows up in a house where anger always led to violence. That child's nervous system learns to interpret any raised voice as a threat, any sudden movement as danger. Fast forward 20 years, and that person is now an adult who flinches at passion, who mistakes intensity for aggression, who can't tell the difference between someone being alive and someone being unsafe. Their perception has been conditioned to collapse those two things into one, and they don't even know it's happening. They just think, that's how the world is. But it's not. It's how their filter is. The psyche edits the infinite into the familiar, because the unfamiliar feels like death to a nervous system still running old programming. This is why freedom doesn't start with positive thinking or affirmations. It starts with noticing the walls you've been mistaking for windows, the doors you thought were locked but were never even there. And this is the part that most self-help culture completely misses. You can't think your way out of perceptual conditioning. You can't affirmation yourself into seeing clearly when your nervous system is still holding the body hostage to an old story. The filter isn't in your thoughts, it's in your wiring. It's in the way your chest tightens when someone gets too close, the way your throat closes when you try to speak your truth, the way your stomach drops when opportunity appears, because some deep part of you learned that visibility equals danger. Integration isn't about overriding those responses. It's about witnessing them, feeling them fully, and asking, what were you trying to protect me from? And is that threat still real? Or am I just replaying a scene from a script that ended years ago? When you start to see the filter itself, not just what it's showing you, something cracks open, the veil thins, and suddenly you realize you've been living in a museum of your own past, staring at old paintings and calling them now. But the present moment, the real one, the one without the filter, has been waiting for you all along, just beyond the edge of what you've been trained to see. Emotions aren't just fleeting reactions, they have weight, they have mass. And just like gravity bends space around a planet, unprocessed emotions bend the field of perception around your life. If you're carrying undigested grief, the world starts to look like a place of loss. If you're holding unacknowledged rage, reality begins to reflect that back to you in 1,000 small confrontations, arguments, and tensions that seem to come out of nowhere. It's not that you're attracting these things in some magical, mystical sense. It's that your emotional gravity is shaping what you notice, what you respond to, and what you unconsciously move toward. Your inner world creates a gravitational pull, and experiences that match that vibration get drawn into orbit. This is why people who say, "I keep attracting the same type of person," aren't crazy or cursed. They're just living inside an emotional field they haven't yet learned to feel all the way through. Think of it like this. Imagine you're carrying a backpack full of stones, but you've been wearing it for so long that you forgot it's even there. Every stone represents an emotion you never fully metabolized. A goodbye you didn't grieve, a hurt you swallowed instead of expressed, a joy you didn't let yourself feel because it seemed too dangerous to be that open. Those stones don't just sit there quietly. They radiate, they hum, and life, being the mirror that it is, responds to that hum. So you meet someone new, and within weeks, the same old pattern shows up. You start a new job, and somehow the same dynamics from the last one reappear. You move to a new city hoping for a fresh start, but the weight in your chest follows you because you are the common denominator. The body remembers what the mind denies, and the soul keeps arranging circumstances until you finally stop running and turn around to face what's been chasing you all along. Integration isn't about transcending your emotions, it's about digesting them, metabolizing them, letting them move through you until they no longer have the power to shape your entire reality. And here's the beautiful, terrifying truth. Once you begin to feel what you've been avoiding, the gravitational field shifts. It's like cleaning out the backpack, one stone at a time. You grieve the relationship that ended 5 years ago, and suddenly you stop seeing every new connection through the lens of abandonment. You allow yourself to feel the anger you've been suffocating since childhood, and the world stops feeling like a place where you have to stay small to stay safe. This isn't instant. It's not a one-time breakthrough moment. It's a slow, sacred unwinding, a return to the body's native intelligence, which has always known how to process emotion if you just stop interrupting it with distraction, denial, or spiritual bypassing. The soul doesn't need you to be enlightened. It needs you to be honest, to stop pretending the weight isn't there, to stop calling numbness peace and avoidance boundaries. Because the moment you start feeling again, really feeling, without the filter of shame or the urgency to fix it, reality begins to reorganize itself around a different frequency. And what shows up next isn't the same old story. It's the one you've been too afraid to let in. You didn't just inherit your grandmother's eyes or your father's stubbornness. You inherited stories, invisible myths that were already in motion long before you were born. These aren't bedtime tales or folklore tucked away in old books. They're living, breathing narratives that move through culture, religion, family lineage, and gender, whispering instructions about who you're supposed to be, what you're allowed to want, and what happens if you step outside the lines. Most people think they're making their own choices, writing their own scripts, but if you look closely, you'll see the same archetypal patterns playing out again and again. The hero's journey, the martyr, the exile, the prodigal son, the forgotten daughter. These myths don't ask permission. They just move through you, shaping your decisions, your relationships, your sense of what's possible. And the wildest part? You don't even know you're inside one until something cracks and you start to see the edges of the story that's been living you. Take the myth of the self-made man, for example. It's everywhere in modern culture. This idea that if you just work hard enough, sacrifice enough, push through enough pain, you'll finally arrive at success, respect, worthiness. Millions of people are living inside that myth right now, grinding themselves into dust, wondering why they still feel empty even when they check all the boxes. But the myth doesn't care about your happiness. It cares about perpetuating itself. It needs you to believe that rest is laziness, that vulnerability is weakness, that asking for help is failure. So you keep running, keep performing, keep sacrificing your soul on the altar of productivity, and the myth feeds on that energy like a forest feeds on rain. You think you're chasing freedom, but you're actually reinforcing the very story that's keeping you trapped. And here's the thing, this isn't your fault. You didn't create the myth, you were born into it. It was already running through your family, your culture, your educational system, the movies you watched, the songs you heard. By the time you were old enough to question it, it was already woven into the fabric of your identity. But once you start to see the myth, once you step back far enough to recognize the pattern, you gain something most people never touch: choice. You realize that the story you've been living isn't the only story available. There are other myths, other archetypes, other ways of being that don't require you to bleed yourself dry to prove you're worthy. Maybe instead of the hero who conquers, you become the wanderer who listens. Maybe instead of the martyr who suffers in silence, you become the oracle who speaks truth, even when it's uncomfortable. The goal isn't to escape myth altogether. That's impossible. We're mythic creatures. We need stories to make sense of existence. But you can learn to recognize which myth is running your life, and you can choose to step out of one and into another. That's the real rite of passage, not transcending the story, but becoming conscious enough to rewrite it. And when you do, the world doesn't just shift around you, it responds to you, because you're no longer a character in someone else's narrative. You're the author. And that changes everything. Most people spend their entire lives running from their own darkness, not realizing that what they call shadow is actually light they rejected. It's not evil. It's not some demonic force lurking in the basement of your psyche waiting to destroy you. It's intelligence, raw, unfiltered, inconvenient intelligence that didn't fit the image you were taught to uphold. Every time you were told, don't be too much, don't be too loud, don't be too angry, too sexual, too wild, too strange, a piece of your aliveness got shoved into the dark, and it's been sitting there ever since, waiting. Not to hurt you, but to be seen. Because the shadow isn't your enemy. It's the part of you that refused to die even when the world demanded you shrink. It's the fragment of your soul that said, I will not disappear, and then hid in the only place no one would look. Inside the parts of yourself you learn to hate. Here's what happens when you keep suppressing the shadow. It doesn't go away. It just gets louder. It starts showing up in your dreams, in your slip-ups, in the moments when you lose control and say something you didn't mean to say, or feel something you didn't want to feel. It shows up in the people you hate for no logical reason, because they're usually embodying the exact qualities you've banished in yourself. If you can't stand people who are too needy, it's probably because you cut off your own need and called it strength. If you despise people who are too confident, it's likely because you shamed your own power and labeled it arrogance. The shadow is a mirror held up by the soul, saying, look at what you've been refusing to own. And the longer you refuse, the more your life becomes a game of whack-a-mole trying to control, avoid, or eliminate the very parts of yourself that are just asking to come home. Suppression is worship given to fear. Every time you push something down, you're bowing to the belief that you're not strong enough to hold it, not wise enough to integrate it, not whole enough to contain the full spectrum of what it means to be human. But here's the magic that no one tells you. The moment you stop running, the shadow stops chasing. The moment you turn around and say, okay, I see you, I feel you, you're allowed to be here, something softens. The energy that was being used to keep the door shut gets freed up. And what you thought was a monster turns out to be an exiled child, a silenced voice, a discarded dream. The soul doesn't mature by becoming more. It matures by becoming whole, by reclaiming the fragments, the rejected pieces, the parts you thought made you unlovable. This doesn't mean acting out every impulse or letting chaos reign. It means witnessing the shadow without judgment, feeling it without trying to fix it, and asking, what were you trying to protect? What gift were you holding that I was too afraid to receive? Because buried in every shadow is a power you've been denying yourself. The anger you suppressed, it's your boundary, your backbone, your refusal to be used. The sadness you avoided, it's your capacity for depth, for empathy, for Gen-Shi connection. The wildness you tamed, it's your instinct, your intuition, your ability to trust yourself when the world goes silent. When you reclaim your shadow, you don't become darker, you become real. And reality, for the first time, stops feeling like a performance and starts feeling like home. Reality doesn't speak in sentences, it speaks in symbols. It whispers through recurring dreams, through the same pattern showing up in different relationships, through the book that falls off the shelf at exactly the right moment, through the stranger who says the one thing you needed to hear. Most people dismiss these as coincidence, as random noise in a chaotic universe, but the soul knows better. The soul recognizes that everything is language, everything is communication, and the unconscious is constantly trying to reach the conscious mind through the only vocabulary it has: images, metaphors, and synchronicities. When you learn to read symbolically, life stops being a series of disconnected events and starts revealing itself as a conversation, a dialogue between the depths of your psyche and the surface of your everyday experience. The universe isn't indifferent, it's responsive. But it doesn't speak English or Portuguese or any human language. It speaks in the old tongue, the one your ancestors knew, the one your dreams still remember. Think about the person who keeps dreaming about a house with locked rooms. Night after night, the same house, the same doors they can't open, the same feeling of something waiting just beyond reach. That's not random. That's the psyche trying to say, there are parts of yourself you haven't explored yet. There are chambers of your own being you've been too afraid to enter. Or consider the woman who notices. She always attracts partners who abandon her right when things get serious. She thinks it's bad luck, a curse, something broken in her. But if you look symbolically, you see the pattern is a mirror, a reflection of the part of her that abandoned herself first, the part that learned long ago that intimacy equals danger, that closeness equals loss. The external relationship is just the soul's way of externalizing an internal wound, putting it on stage so it can finally be seen, felt, and integrated. Synchronicity isn't magic. It's the nervous system of the soul, the way meaning moves through matter to get your attention when logic and language have failed. And here's where most people get stuck. They want the symbol to be literal. They want the dream about the house to mean they should buy a house, or the repeated number sequence to be a lottery ticket, or the chance encounter to be a soulmate guarantee. But symbols don't work like that. They're poetic, not prescriptive. They point toward something deeper, something that can't be reduced to a single action or decision. When you see the same animal crossing your path repeatedly, the question isn't what does a deer mean? It's what quality does the deer carry that my soul is trying to embody right now? Gentleness, alertness, the ability to move through the forest without force. When you keep losing things, the question isn't just where did it go, it's what am I losing inside myself? What am I letting slip through my fingers because I'm not paying attention? Symbolic resonance asks you to slow down, to feel into the texture of your experience, to notice what keeps showing up not as problem to solve, but as instruction to receive. Because when you start reading reality this way, when you let the symbols speak, you realize that nothing is wasted, nothing is random, and even pain becomes a form of sacred instruction. The soul has been trying to reach you all along. It's just been waiting for you to learn its language. Inside your psyche, there are gods, not metaphorically, actually. Jung called them archetypes. Ancient cultures called them deities. But the truth is the same. There are primordial patterns of consciousness living inside you, shaping your desires, your fears, your sense of purpose, and the way you move through the world. These aren't abstract concepts you study in a psychology class. They're forces, energies with their own intelligence, their own agendas, their own way of bending reality around them. Every decision you make is an offering at the altar of a certain archetype. Every relationship you enter is a ritual invoking a specific god, and most people have no idea which one they're serving. They think they're making rational choices, following their own will, but if you look closely, you'll see the same archetypal pattern playing out again and again. The warrior who can't stop fighting even when the battle is over. The lover who keeps sacrificing themselves on the altar of intimacy. The sage who isolates in the pursuit of wisdom and forgets they have a body. Let's say you're someone who's always been the responsible one, the person everyone relies on, the one who holds it together when everything falls apart. On the surface, that sounds noble, even admirable, but symbolically, you're living inside the archetype of the caregiver, maybe even the martyr. And that archetype has a shadow side. It demands that you stay needed, that you never ask for help, that you derive your worth from how much you give and how little you take. So you end up exhausted, resentful, wondering why no one ever shows up for you the way you show up for them. But here's the thing. The archetype doesn't care about your happiness. It cares about expressing itself through you. It will keep pulling you into situations where you have to rescue, fix, or save someone, because that's how it stays alive. And until you recognize which god you've been unconsciously serving, you'll keep repeating the same pattern, wondering why your life feels like a script you didn't write, but can't seem to escape. Or maybe you're the person who's always chasing the next big thing, the new project, the new relationship, the new city, the new version of yourself. You think you're just ambitious, just restless, just someone who loves growth and change. But underneath, you might be living inside the archetype of the seeker, or even the exile, the one who can never quite settle, because some part of them believes that home is always somewhere else, that fulfillment is always one more step away. That's not a personality flaw, it's an archetypal possession, and the only way out is through recognition. You have to see the pattern, name the god, and then ask, is this energy serving my soul's evolution, or is it just keeping me in motion so I never have to feel what's here? Transformation doesn't happen by switching archetypes or trying to become someone else. It happens when you become conscious of which archetype is running your life, and you learn to dance with it instead of being danced by it. You stop being the unconscious servant of the god and become its collaborator. And that shift, from possession to partnership, is where real power lives. Because when you know which god you're working with, you can finally choose how to honor it without letting it consume you. Time doesn't move the way we think it does. Inside the psyche, the past isn't behind you, it's breathing through you right now in this moment. That fight you had with your father when you were 12, it's not over. That rejection you felt in high school, it's still echoing. That moment you made yourself small to stay safe, it's still shaping how you show up in the world today. The present is haunted by the emotions you refuse to feel, the moments you left unfinished, the experiences you couldn't digest because you didn't have the capacity, the support, or the safety to do so. And the soul, in its infinite wisdom, doesn't just forget those moments. It keeps them alive, circulating them through your nervous system, replaying them in your relationships, your choices, your dreams, waiting for you to finally turn around and feel what you couldn't feel back then. This is why healing isn't about moving on. It's about moving inward into the echo itself until the reverberation finally dissolves. Most people don't realize how much of their present moment is being hijacked by the past. They think they're responding to what's happening now, but they're actually responding to a memory, a ghost, a fragment of an old wound that got triggered by something in the current environment. You meet someone new, and within days you're already bracing for betrayal. Not because they've done anything wrong, but because your nervous system remembers the last person who looked at you like that, the one who left, the one who lied. You get an opportunity to speak your truth, and your throat closes. Not because the moment is dangerous, but because somewhere deep inside, there's a younger version of you who learned that visibility equals punishment. The present moment is trying to happen, but the past keeps inserting itself like static on a radio, distorting the signal. And until you go back and clear the interference, until you feel the original wound all the way through, you'll keep living in a time loop, replaying the same emotional script with different actors, different settings, but the same underlying story. And here's the hard part. You can't think your way out of temporal echo. You can understand it intellectually. You can map it out in therapy. You can even identify exactly which childhood moment is causing the problem. But until you feel it in your body, until you let the emotion that was frozen in time finally move through you, nothing changes. The echo continues. This is why so many people spend years in therapy talking about the same wounds over and over without ever feeling liberated. They're trying to solve a somatic problem with a cognitive tool. The body is where time gets stuck. The body is where the past is still living. And the only way to end the repetition is to drop out of the mind and into the visceral cellular memory of the wound, to let yourself shake, cry, rage, or collapse in the way you couldn't back then, to give the nervous system permission to complete the response it was forced to suppress. That's when the echo dissolves. That's when the past finally becomes past. And suddenly the present moment opens up in a way it never could before. Clear, spacious, new. Not because time healed you, but because you finally healed time. Intention isn't just a thought you have. It's a frequency you broadcast. It's the alignment of your nervous system, your emotion, your archetype, and your attention, all pointing in the same direction, creating a coherence so strong that reality itself begins to reorganize around it. This isn't wishful thinking or manifestation culture dressed up in quantum language. This is about understanding that consciousness isn't passive, it's participatory. You're not observing a fixed, objective reality from the outside. You're inside the field, shaping it, bending it, collapsing possibilities into form with every choice you make, every emotion you hold, every belief you embody. The quantum doesn't respond to your desires, it responds to your depth of presence. It reads the signal you're emitting at the deepest level, beneath the words, beneath the affirmations, beneath the vision boards. And if that signal is split, if part of you wants one thing while another part is terrified of it, the field reflects that fragmentation back to you. You get mixed results, half-open doors, opportunities that appear and then vanish. Not because the universe is withholding, but because you are. Think about the person who says they want love, but spends every night reinforcing the belief that they're unworthy of it. They repeat affirmations, they visualize the perfect partner, they do all the manifestation work, but underneath, their nervous system is still running the old program. I'm too much, I'm not enough, people leave, intimacy hurts. That's the signal they're actually broadcasting. And the quantum field, which doesn't judge or argue, just mirrors that frequency back. So they attract unavailable people, or they sabotage the good ones, or they never meet anyone at all. And they think, see, I knew it wouldn't work. Love isn't for me. But it's not that love isn't available, it's that their coherence isn't there yet. There's a split between what they consciously want and what they unconsciously believe they deserve. And until that split is integrated, until the nervous system catches up to the intention, the reality they're trying to create will keep flickering in and out like a light with a loose connection. This is why real transformation isn't about forcing reality to comply with your will. It's about becoming so coherent in your being that reality has no choice but to respond. It's about clearing the internal fragmentation, dissolving the contradictions, and aligning thought, emotion, and embodiment into a single unified signal. When that happens, when all the layers of your psyche are pointing in the same direction, something shifts. Opportunities appear that weren't there before. Synchronicities multiply. Doors open without you having to force them. Not because you've mastered some secret technique, but because you've become congruent. The quantum responds to coherence the way a tuning fork responds to vibration. It resonates, it amplifies, it matches. And suddenly, you're not trying to manifest anymore. You're just being, and reality is sculpting itself around the truth of who you've become. That's the real power, not in controlling the field, but in becoming so deeply aligned with your own essence that the field has no choice but to reflect it back. And when that happens, life stops feeling like a struggle and starts feeling like a dance. Not because everything becomes easy, but because you're finally moving with the deeper geometry of existence instead of against it. There's a threshold that most people never reach, not because it's hidden, but because reaching it requires letting go of the one thing we've spent our entire lives defending, the story of me. At the edges of perception, where the layers thin and the boundaries blur, something radical happens. The I that you've been so certain of, the one with your name, your history, your preferences, your wounds, starts to feel like a costume you've been wearing so long you forgot it wasn't your skin. And beneath that costume, there's something else. Not another identity to claim, but a field, a vast silent awareness that's been watching this whole time, holding every version of you, every story, every lifetime, without ever being contained by any of them. This isn't transcendence in the way most people imagine it, like floating above your problems on a cloud of spiritual bliss. It's more like a dissolving, a quiet erosion of the walls you thought defined you, until what remains isn't a person, but a presence. And that presence doesn't belong to you. You belong to it. Most spiritual teachings talk about awakening like it's some grand, explosive moment, a flash of light, a cosmic download, an instant liberation. And maybe for some people, it happens that way. But for most, it's slower, subtler, more like fog lifting at dawn. You start to notice that the thoughts you've been identifying with aren't really yours. They're just patterns moving through consciousness, ancient scripts handed down through culture, family, and conditioning. You start to see that the emotions you've been clinging to, the ones you thought made you you, are just weather systems passing through the psyche. They come, they go, but the sky remains. And you start to realize that the you you've been defending, protecting, trying to fix or improve or enlighten, that's not the real you. That's just the character, the role, the fragment of the infinite, pretending to be finite so it could experience itself from a particular angle. And the moment you see that, really see it, not just understand it intellectually, something cracks, not breaks, but opens. And what pours through isn't more of you, it's less. It's the quiet disappearance of the need to be anyone at all. And here's what nobody tells you about this layer. It's not the end of suffering, and it's not the end of being human. You don't suddenly stop having preferences or emotions, or a body that gets tired and a heart that can break. But the relationship to all of it changes. You stop taking the story so seriously. You stop believing that this particular version of you is the only version, the true version, the one that has to survive at all costs. You see yourself as one note in an infinite symphony, one wave in an endless ocean, one mirror reflecting the same light that's been shining through every form since the beginning of time. And from that view, everything is happening within you, not within the small you, the one with the name and the social security number, but within the field itself. There is no outside, there never was. The people you meet, the pain you feel, the beauty you witness, it's all you experiencing yourself through a billion different masks. And when you finally rest in that knowing, not as a belief, but as a felt reality, the soul stops searching. Not because it found what it was looking for, but because it realized it was never lost. It was just playing hide and seek with itself, and now the game is over. Not ended, just seen. And in that seeing there's a peace so vast it doesn't even need to call itself peace. It just is. So here's the question that matters. Now that you've seen the 9 layers, now that you know reality isn't something happening to you but through you, what are you going to do with that knowledge? Because understanding these layers intellectually is one thing, but living them, embodying them, letting them reshape how you move through the world, that's where the real transformation begins. You can close this video, go back to your life, and let this information become just another interesting idea you once heard. Or you can take what you've learned here and start applying it, slowly, deliberately, one layer at a time. Start noticing the filter your nervous system is using. Start feeling the emotions you've been avoiding. Start asking which myth has been living you, which god you've been serving, which temporal echo is still running your present moment. This isn't about perfection. It's about awareness. And awareness, when it's genuine, changes everything. What would your life look like if you stopped running from your shadow and started reclaiming the power buried there? What would shift if you learned to read reality symbolically, seeing every pattern, every synchronicity, every repeated experience as a message from your soul trying to reach you? What would open up if you became so coherent in your being, so aligned in thought, emotion, and embodiment that the quantum field had no choice but to respond? These aren't rhetorical questions. They're invitations. And the soul doesn't wait forever. It's patient, yes, but it's also urgent. It knows you have a limited amount of time in this body, in this life, to wake up to the architecture you've been living inside. And every day you spend unconscious, every moment you let the old patterns run without questioning them, is a day the soul is whispering, "There's more. There's so much more. Please, look deeper." So I'm asking you directly, are you ready to stop being a passenger in your own existence? Are you willing to go into the layers, to feel what you've been avoiding, to see what you've been denying, to reclaim the fragments you thought were too dark, or too much, or too broken to integrate? Because this is the work, not the glamorous, Instagram-friendly version of spirituality where everything is light and love and good vibes. This is the real work, the soul work, the shadow work, the architecture work. And it's not easy, but it's honest. And it's the only path that actually leads somewhere instead of just keeping you comfortable in your cage. If what you've heard today resonated with you, if something inside you stirred and said, "Yes, this is what I've been looking for," then don't let this be the end. Subscribe to this channel. Turn on the notifications, because we're going deeper. Every video is another layer, another key, another piece of the map that leads you back to yourself. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. This is just the beginning. The soul has been waiting for you. And now, finally, you're starting to listen.